Hey, how's everybody doing? Today we're talking about marketing results. Now, I do have a video previously where I went over what foundation you should have to get your business up and running in the correct way. And today we're going to talk about part 2, what is your service? Now, just a brief recap, your foundation should be pretty strong, meaning you should have a website, social media, and you should be listed on search listings. Okay, so that's part 1. And if you want to, you can look in my video feed and look up that video and play it before we go to part 2. But part 2, I think it's very important for any business to know what's going on, which means what is your service? Now, every business offers a different thing. Even if you're in the same business, for example, if you're a plumber, right? This plumber, his services might vary depending on the equipment that they have or on the stage of development of their business. So if it's a business that's just starting, like a plumbing business that, for example, the owner just got their contractor's license, that is a whole different type of service and marketing from someone who has had their contractor's license and who has been actively in business for the last 10 years. So those are two different markets for the same type of service. So if, for example, someone were to come into my office and they wanted a website from a business that they're first starting, then I would recommend to them to start their foundation and make that investment and then go from there. Now, personally, I do not know what service you're in when I first meet you, or what kind of success you're gonna have. Most of the time, when I do get someone in here, some people have unrealistic expectations of what will happen. If, for example, you build a website is built for you, somehow that investment, they want it to translate into instant return on what they spent. Now, if I were a plumber and I bought a tool, like one of those plumbing tools, to unclog toilets, maybe. If I bought one of those and it cost me $300 to buy it, it's not gonna do anything for me unless I find somebody who actually wants to pay me for it. Now, on that first client, I'm not sure if I'm gonna make my money back. So I had this one client who we started off with advertising unclogging toilets, right? And each service of that, it's highly competitive, and that would be $100 per service call. So now that is hard for us to justify any spending of it, and we found that out a few months later, because if you're spending $300, $400 a month for it, then you have to make 4 service calls just to get that back. And that doesn't include what you spend in labor, in wear and tear of your car and your equipment. So because all these expenses kind of add up, first off, you have to figure out what your service is and what your budget is. Right? So if you have this service, you need to figure out how you're going to compete against other people. Right? Just because it works for somebody does not mean it's going to work for your business. So if you're in a market that's highly competitive, then it's going to be hard for you to compete against that. Another example is cleaning companies, right? And we were talking about this company in step 1, which is building your foundation. Cleaning companies, that's a business that's the barrier to entry is low. What that means that anyone could actually pick up a mop and a broom and do the business. So to try to get customers from that type of service is going to be more difficult than a service that has a high barrier to entry and there's less competition. So the more competition you have in a service, the more difficult it's going to be for you to get a client, and the more you're going to spend in your advertising, because someone already has flooded the market with that service. So what that means is that if there is 1,000 cleaning companies, and those 1,000 cleaning companies have already contracted half of the market, there's not a lot we could do with the market. So in any given month, if there's 10,000 people buying this service, right, then that's all there is. There's just 10,000 people, and if there's 5,000 cleaning companies doing cleaning, guess what? That's only 2 per cleaning company. Now, is that gonna keep you in business? How much do you have to charge for you to stay in business if you're only getting 2 sales per month? And if it's highly devalued because there's so much competition, that means that your market price is not going to be that high, and you're gonna have to do a lot more, what I call fighting, to actually get some more market share from these other companies. So whoever outspends the other, whoever outworks the other, outsmarts the other, that's the company who's actually is gonna stay in business. And another thing with cleaning companies and anything that's maintenance related, there's gonna be an initial contact. Say one person contacts you for cleaning their home, right? And the assumption is if you're gonna clean their home, they're gonna trust you to do that, and they're gonna trust you to stay on contract or clean their home once a week, once a month, you know, whatever the term is for that. So if by chance I get someone, say out of those 2 sales calls, I get one person that contacts me and I end up working on the job that they asked me to do, that means that I might stay on with them for the next year, next 2 years, depending how long the service rate, how long the duration, how long I keep a client. Okay, so I might keep a client for 2 years, and there's different companies that might keep them for 6 months, or depending on what your goal is and depending your quality of service. Obviously, if I get a client, if I get one call, right, and then that one call I might not do great service, then I'm not gonna get a call back. Maybe if I get that one call and I do great service for 6 months, and then something happens to my company where I can't deliver, I'm gonna lose that client. Okay, so all these things are factors for you to decide what your service is. Also, when you're deciding your service, you need to figure out what other people are offering. So if someone's offering, you know, so like 30 minutes or less, or first hour free, or you know, referrals, or whatever it is that the body of their service is, then you have to take that into account and try to figure out a different way, a different approach to compete against them, because you're not going to be able to compete with them head on, especially if you're starting out. Now, I understand a lot of companies want to do that. They're like, well, you know, this big company has tons of sales and I want to compete against them. Now, big companies are able to lose on some services to gain others. So that's something that you need to consider. If how much initial capital you have to stay in the game. If somebody's just starting off and they spent every cent that they have on the foundation by itself, then you're gonna need a grace period to kind of figure out where you're at. this first step might not pay off right from the beginning. So if you spent $5,000, which is the average cost to build your foundation, then that might take a year. So the way I see it is I'm gonna have this for my business operating for the next 2 years, next 5 years. So if that's the case, then this foundation has cost me $1,000 per year. So whatever I make over $1,000 is a profit to me. Does that make sense? So I spent $5,000, right? And realistically, I know that this website and this everything that I have developed has cost me $5,000, and I know that all of this I'm gonna have for the next 5 years. So I need to make $1,000 every year just to break even. So if today I'm at zero and I spent $5,000, then I know that in the next year I'm gonna make $1,000. Now I obviously want some return for that. So if with deducting my expenses, say I make $10,000, right? I make $10,000 and I have expenses, this and that, and then my final profit is $1,500. So from that, I just made $500 from my initial investment of $1,000 per year. So that's kind of how I look at it. If I'm gonna spend some money, I figure out what time frame I'm looking to recover that money, right? And then from there on, I kind of adjust what my service offering is gonna be, so I could recoup that money back. So I hope that helps to figure out what your service is gonna be in your industry. If you have any questions or anything, let me know. Also subscribe, hit a like,